Ed never even thought of himself as an artist. That never occurred to him. He made a guitar with the same spirit that he fixed a door to the chicken house.
No one didn't have no tools. All I had was a handsaw and a hacksaw. That's what I started with. And the first one I made didn't look like much. I got one of them in there behind the stove.
Ed's guitar making was a part of his larger vision of himself as a servant of God.
And I believed God. And that's all I can tell you. And that's why I made them.
Ed Stilley was amazingly free to do anything. Like, he was fearless. He was a fearless artist, and I think he's much an inspiration to guitar makers.
I've had a lot of people say to me, "You're one of a kind."
Ed is first and foremost a preacher, and he's only a guitar maker by accident. And specifically, he's a guitar maker by divine order. When he started making guitars at divine command, Ed was at a crisis point in his life. Ed's life was threatened. The sort of order of his life, the family situation that he lived in was threatened.
He told me, well, I was working in my field, plowing with my mule like I always do, and at this very moment I must have had some kind of heart attack.
That Ozark sun was beating down, dropped my plow to the rocky ground, and the world turned black in a heart attack, and a vision passed before my eyes. Was I dead or alive? I pray the Lord take me to the other side.
So he was laying on his back, just looking at the sky, and there was nobody to help him. Nobody could hear him yelling for help. So he said at this moment he had a vision.
During that period, God spoke to him, and God said, "If you will make musical instruments and give them to children, I'll take care of the matter." That's the exact phrasing he reported to me. God said, "I will take care of the matter."
I was real tired one day. I laid down to sleep. And while I was sleeping, God said, "If you'll make guitars, I'll handle this matter." Well, now he did. He told me, he said, "If you'll do this," said, "I'll take care of it." I got busy.
Ed's threatened. God gives him a solution. He obeys. And everything clears up. And so when he goes to his shop and starts making the first of roughly 200 guitars, he's a happy man.
And my neighbor, he come back and see me, and he said, "You're the saddest boy I ever seen till this, and now you're the happiest."
It's his burning bush moment. I mean, God speaks to him. His life takes on a meaning that's, that cannot be transcended. God tells Ed to do things that Ed has no clue how to do. Ed doesn't know the first thing about making stringed instruments. He doesn't know how to fret the thing. He doesn't know anything about musical tuning, but that doesn't matter to Ed.
I didn't know how to make them, and I just take whatever slab I could get. I'd start from there. If I started to make a guitar and it broke before I got that far, I'd make another kind of instrument with it.
So Ed goes to work, and over the next 20 years or so, Ed makes guitars. Banjos, mandolins, but he makes stringed instruments. He figures out how to do it with the very limited toolkit that he has.
I just kept making one after another one, and some of them I made I couldn't feature hand them out to anybody. But then finally I got so I could make them where that they'd play.
So somehow or another, in the process of that, he made this magnificent art. But it's art without ego.
He would never even autograph or sign his instruments.
Right.
That was like just not his doing.
There were different ones said they'd like me to put my name on their guitars. They brought them to me after they'd given them to them. And they wanted me to put my name on it. And I said no. I said, "God's the one to start this," and I said I want his name to be honored. And I wouldn't put my name on them.
He writes this on every instrument, even my fiddle, every instrument.
And there's no question that this is the most important part for Ed. True faith, true light, have faith in God. And really, you know, that's why Ed's doing this, and that is to get these words out to your eyes.
Even one of my brother-in-laws that lives down in Fort Smith, he said, I want one of them for my children, but don't want no writings on it. I said, go down to the store, they got plenty of them.
I think the appeal of Ed's art is an interaction between an artisan and nature that doesn't insist on a complete transformation of the raw material.
This is the butterfly guitar, and this is the instrument that Ed gave me, and one of the happiest days of my life when I received this instrument. And it's a great Ed Stilley guitar. It sounds good. We've been performing with it for years. Ed used scraps. He used stuff that he'd get from the sawmill for free. He didn't care what it was. It was slab wood, which they normally just burn.
I take old slabs out of the sawmill, and one man said, my trash is your treasure.
So that's why you have a piece of basswood here, and some oak here, and some cedar, and some walnut. This is basswood on the back. By the way, down here, this is an old door hinge that he found in the holler. This is a pork chop bone. The frets were always made from brazing rods, which is from a welder. He could get those for free. They were always painted red. Halfway through his journey, he started painting them red, and we asked him why, and he said, "Well, that's barn paint's the cheapest paint you can buy." Inside, you've got all the
door springs.
She's got a chainsaw mounting bracket in the middle of the fiddle there. This one's got door springs and a saw blade right through the center, and you can hear it if I reach in there. There it is. See how nice it rings?
Oh, that just makes the music come out of there. At first, I put glass bottles or anything else trying to get the music out. And finally, I learned the two screen door springs, and saw blade was the best thing I could get.
In the musical world, authenticity is one of the things that we admire most in any genre of art or music or anything. And so to see someone with this pure authenticity just
That's right.
speaks to us on a lot of levels.
And it's tempting sometimes to almost fall into Ed's perspective. You know, look at all the things that had to happen. I mean, Ed for 20 years, he makes these guitars, nobody pays any attention to it. And then this guy Kelly comes along and spends, all this time putting it together.
Well, actually, Donna is the one that first discovered Ed for the first time.
Well, I was at a friend's house, and she had one of Ed's instruments sitting on their fireplace mantle, and I was just enthralled with it. I was, what is this? And I just had to run home and get Kelly because I knew he would just be enamored with it. So we went back over there and we asked her, we said, could you take us to meet this man? So she actually took us to meet Ed and Liza almost 20 years ago and started this whole journey. It was amazing.
And he was so welcoming and sweet to us. He was thrilled that I was interested in what he was doing, and I started visiting regularly.
Kelly spent 20 years doing this. He had to collect these guitars. He had to sort of learn to encounter Ed on Ed's own ground. And it's a wonderful story.
Sometimes people ask how he feels about this book and all this attention he's getting. And actually, none of it means anything to Ed except for one thing, and that these words are going forth into the world. He sees us all as instruments of this mission, this being guided from above.
It's tempting you can be tempted in Ed's direction, that there's some sort of guiding hand in all this.
You have made a big difference in this world.
Well, I want to. Jesus said, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven.
Why'd you put that stuff inside that guitar that you made? Chainsaw parts and pot lids and rusty old saw blades.
Chainsaw parts and pot lids is all I can afford. Works real nice to better speak the voice of the Lord.
How'd you bend them sides like that? It makes no sense to me. That don't look a bit like any guitar that I've seen.
I bull them sides and bend them till that wood's about to pop. As soon as I hear the border break, well, that is where I'd stop.
Well, I heard you had some kinfolk They went and called you up, said they'd like to have one without that writing on the top.
They don't need that guitar, and I'm telling you what for. I hear that they got plenty of them guitars at the store.
Say, Mr. Stilley, well, I'd play a pretty song if I just had a fiddle like this one of my own.
Child, I will tell you that day's drawing near. I would be most pleased if you had this one here.